Simply Put by Ben Guttmann. Introduction. In Simply Put, Ben Guttmann delivers a timeless and crucial reminder: simplicity wins. Whether you're trying to communicate in business, convey a personal message, or market a product, simple always works better than complicated. Guttmann's core thesis is that most of us tend to overcomplicate our communication, throwing in too much information, using jargon, or presenting things in ways that make it hard for others to grasp. What's worse, the more complicated we make things, the more our audience disengages. But here's the good news: you can become a master of simplicity. The beauty of simplifying your communication is that it makes everything you do more effective. When your message is clear, people understand it faster, remember it longer, and act on it more readily. Whether you're a marketer, business leader, teacher, or even just looking to make better connections in your personal life, the principles in this book can help you communicate with greater impact. Ben Guttmann is an expert in marketing and communication who has worked with countless brands to distill their messages into simple, powerful concepts. His years of experience have taught him that while simplicity may seem intuitive, it's often much harder to achieve than complexity. This summary offers a breakdown of each chapter in Simply Put, highlighting the main takeaways and practical strategies you can apply in your work and life. But remember, for a richer experience and detailed examples, you should grab a copy of the book itself. This is just a summary. Guttmann's full book is full of actionable insights that can help you transform your communication style. Chapter 1. Why Simple Wins. In this opening chapter, Guttmann lays the groundwork for his argument. Simplicity beats complexity in almost every communication context. He starts by explaining that we live in a world saturated with information. From the moment we wake up until the moment we go to bed, we're bombarded with messages, ads, notifications, and distractions. With all that noise, the human brain naturally filters out anything that feels too difficult to process. This is why simplicity is so powerful. If you want to cut through the clutter, you need to make your message easy to grasp. Think of your audience's attention span as a narrow window. You only have a few seconds to make your point, and if those seconds are spent trying to explain something in a complicated way, you've already lost them. Guttmann compares this to standing in a crowded room and trying to get someone's attention. If you shout out a clear, simple message, they're likely to hear and respond. But if you start rambling or using complex language, you'll quickly get drowned out. One of the key ideas in this chapter is that simplicity doesn't mean dumbing things down. It means clarifying your message so that the essential points shine through. For example, think about some of the most iconic advertising campaigns. The ones that stick with you aren't the ones filled with technical jargon or endless details. They're the ones that deliver a sharp, focused message. Guttmann uses examples like Apple's Think Different campaign, which didn't overwhelm people with product specifications, but rather focused on a powerful, emotional idea. That simplicity made it memorable. In day-to-day communication, the same principles apply. Whether you're writing an email to a colleague, explaining a concept to a client, or even talking to friends, clarity is your best friend. The clearer and simpler your message, the more likely people are to engage with it. Guttmann stresses that we often overestimate how much information our audience can process, which leads us to provide too many details or explanations. The truth is, your audience only needs the essential pieces of information. The simpler you can make those pieces, the more effective your communication will be. Chapter 2. The Science of Simplicity. In this chapter, Guttmann delves into the science behind why simplicity works. It turns out, our brains are wired to prefer simplicity. When we encounter information, our brains use something called cognitive load to process it. Cognitive load refers to the amount of mental effort required to understand something. The more complex the information, the higher the cognitive load, and the more strain it places on our brains. And here's the catch: humans naturally try to minimize cognitive load whenever possible. Guttmann explains that when the cognitive load is too high, meaning the message is too complicated, people tend to tune out or forget what they've heard. On the other hand, when the cognitive load is low, meaning the message is easy to process, people are more likely to understand it, remember it, and even act on it. This is why simplicity is such a powerful tool in communication. When you simplify your message, you're essentially reducing the cognitive load, making it easier for your audience to engage with what you're saying. There's a fascinating concept Guttmann introduces called the fluency effect. The fluency effect is the idea that the easier something is to understand, the more credible and appealing it seems. Studies have shown that people are more likely to trust and prefer messages that are presented simply. This applies to everything from marketing to academic writing to casual conversations. If you want people to trust what you're saying, simplicity is key. For example, think about how you feel when you visit a website that's cluttered and hard to navigate. It's frustrating, and you're likely to leave before you even find the information you need. But when you visit a site with a clean, simple design, it feels more professional and trustworthy. The same logic applies to all forms of communication. The easier your message is to process, the more positively your audience will respond. Guttmann also touches on some research that shows how simplicity can help people make decisions. When people are faced with too many choices or too much information, they can become overwhelmed and experience something called decision paralysis. This is when people are so overwhelmed by the complexity of a decision that they end up making no decision at all. By simplifying the information you present, you help people overcome this paralysis and make decisions more easily. In short, simplicity isn't just a preference, it's a psychological necessity. When you make things easier for people to understand, you're more likely to get the results you want. Chapter 3: Simplicity in Marketing. Marketing is one of the fields where simplicity matters most, and in this chapter, Guttmann shows you how to apply the principles of simplicity to your marketing efforts. Whether you're promoting a product, service, or idea, your goal is to capture your audience's attention and make them care about what you're offering. The best way to do that is by keeping your message simple. Let's start with some iconic examples from the world of advertising. Guttmann highlights the "Got Milk" campaign as a perfect illustration of simplicity in action. The slogan itself is just 2 words, yet it became a cultural phenomenon. Why? Because it was direct, relatable, and easy to remember. It didn't bombard the audience with the many health benefits of milk or the science behind it. Instead, it posed a simple, thought-provoking question that made people think about their own relationship with milk. This simplicity made the campaign stand out and resonate with a wide audience. Guttmann also points to Apple's marketing as a prime example of how simplicity can create a lasting impact. Apple's ads rarely list every feature of a product. Instead, they focus on one key idea or feature, and they present it in a clean, minimalist way. For example, when the iPhone was first introduced, Apple didn't highlight all of its technical capabilities. Instead, they focused on the idea of the smartphone as a revolutionary device, something that could change the way we live. This clear, focused message helped Apple stand out in a crowded market. But marketing isn't just about slogans and ads. Guttmann explains that simplicity should be a guiding principle in every aspect of your marketing strategy. Whether you're creating a social media post, writing copy for your website, or crafting an email campaign, the goal should always be to communicate the core message as clearly and concisely as possible. One of the most important concepts Guttmann introduces in this chapter is the idea of the single-minded proposition. This is the one thing you want your audience to take away from your marketing message. When crafting a campaign, you should always ask yourself, what is the single most important thing I want people to remember? Once you've identified that, your job is to make sure everything else supports that core message. If anything detracts from it, cut it out. Consistency is also a key part of simplicity in marketing. Guttmann argues that brands that are consistent in their messaging across all platforms are more likely to build trust with their audience. When your brand message is clear and consistent, people know what to expect from you, and that predictability fosters trust. On the flip side, if your messaging is scattered or inconsistent, it creates confusion, and people are less likely to engage with your brand. Guttmann encourages you to think about how you can apply these principles of simplicity in your own marketing efforts. Whether you're running a business, promoting a personal brand, or even just trying to get an idea across to a friend, simplicity will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. Chapter 4. The Power of Visual Simplicity. Visual communication is just as important as the words you use, and Guttmann argues that it's often easier to overcomplicate visuals than text. Think about a cluttered website with too many colors, fonts, and images. It's overwhelming, and most people will click away before they even understand what it's about. In contrast, a clean and simple design immediately draws people in. In this chapter, Guttmann makes a compelling case for why visual simplicity is a critical aspect of effective communication. Visuals are everywhere in our daily lives, from social media and websites to presentations and advertisements. Yet, too often, visuals are cluttered with too many elements, colors, fonts, or images, making them hard to interpret. The same rule of thumb that applies to words applies to visuals. Less is more. He walks you through some practical examples of how simplicity in design can create a more impactful message. Think about the difference between a cluttered PowerPoint presentation filled with text and graphics versus a slide with a single, powerful image and a few key words. The simpler slide is not only more visually appealing, but it's also more memorable. Your audience's eyes are naturally drawn to what's important, and they're more likely to remember the core message. Guttmann shares the example of Google's homepage, which has famously been one of the most minimalistic web pages on the Internet for years. It's just a search bar with a few buttons, yet it's one of the most visited sites in the world. The simplicity of the design allows users to focus on the main function, searching, without distractions. This is the power of visual simplicity at work. Guttmann encourages you to embrace simplicity in all visual aspects of your communication, whether you're creating a website, designing an ad, or putting together a presentation. Visual hierarchy, he explains, is the key to guiding your audience's attention. When you prioritize the most important elements of your design and give them prominence, whether through size, placement, or color, you help your audience focus on what matters most. Visual simplicity isn't just about aesthetics. It's about making your message easier to understand and more impactful. Guttmann offers practical advice for anyone looking to simplify their visuals, from using fewer elements to embracing white space. White space, he explains, is not empty space. It's an active part of the design that gives the audience's eyes a place to rest and helps them focus on the important parts of the message. He also delves into the psychology behind visual simplicity. Studies show that people are more likely to trust and remember visuals that are clean and easy to interpret. When your design is cluttered, it creates cognitive overload, just like overly complicated text. By simplifying your visuals, you make it easier for your audience to process the information, which in turn makes your message more persuasive. Guttmann closes the chapter by emphasizing that visual simplicity is a skill that takes practice. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that more elements make a design more impressive, but in reality, it's the opposite. The best designs are those that communicate the most with the least. When you embrace simplicity in your visuals, you're not only creating a more aesthetically pleasing experience, but you're also making it easier for your audience to understand and remember your message. Chapter 5. Finding Simplicity in Data. In today's data-driven world, information can quickly become overwhelming. Businesses, governments, and organizations all rely on data to make decisions, but the way data is presented often makes it difficult to understand. Too many charts, graphs, and figures can cause confusion rather than clarity. Guttmann addresses this challenge head-on, showing you how to simplify data so that it's both meaningful and easy to digest. Data is only as useful as the story it tells, and Guttmann argues that the best way to tell a story with data is by keeping things simple. You've probably sat through presentations where the speaker flashed a complex chart or graph on the screen, leaving you scratching your head, wondering what the point was. The problem in these cases isn't the data itself, it's the way it's presented. Guttmann suggests starting with a clear goal. What do you want your audience to take away from the data? Once you've identified that, focus on the data points that support that goal. For instance, if you're trying to show that your company's sales have increased over the past year, don't overwhelm your audience with every metric you can find. Instead, highlight the key sales figures that illustrate that growth, and use a simple visual to represent it. He also advises against using overly complex graphs and charts. While it might be tempting to use fancy visuals to impress your audience, Guttmann warns that this often backfires. The more complicated the visual, the harder it is for people to interpret. A simple bar chart or line graph can often tell the story more effectively than a 3D scatter plot or a multi-layered pie chart. Guttmann also introduces the concept of data storytelling. Data storytelling is about using data to build a narrative that's both informative and engaging. Instead of just presenting numbers, you frame the data in a way that helps your audience understand why it matters. For example, if you're presenting quarterly financial results, don't just list the numbers. Explain what those numbers mean for the company's future. This helps your audience see the bigger picture and makes the data more relatable. He also touches on the importance of making data relatable. People are more likely to engage with data if it connects to something they care about. For instance, instead of just presenting a percentage, Guttmann suggests finding ways to translate that number into real-world terms. Saying, "Our sales grew by 20% might be impressive, but saying, "We gained 200 new customers in the last quarter," gives people a clearer, more relatable picture. This chapter is filled with practical tips for simplifying data and making it more meaningful. Guttmann's overarching message is clear. Data is a powerful tool, but only if it's presented in a way that's easy to understand. By stripping away the unnecessary details and focusing on the core message, you can make your data work for you, rather than against you. Chapter 6. How to be a simplicity advocate. In many organizations, complexity is the norm. People tend to think that the more information they include in a report or the more jargon they use in a presentation, the more credible and authoritative they'll seem. But as Guttmann points out in this chapter, this couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is that complexity often leads to confusion, and confusion leads to inaction. Guttmann encourages you to become a simplicity advocate in your workplace or community. This means not only practicing simplicity in your own communication, but also encouraging others to do the same. It's about creating a culture where clear, straightforward communication is valued and rewarded. One of the best ways to lead by example is through your emails. We've all received emails that go on for paragraphs, filled with unnecessary details and complex language. Guttmann advises you to keep your emails short, clear, and to the point. When you send a concise email, you're showing respect for the recipient's time and making it easier for them to respond. Over time, others will notice your clear communication style and may start to follow your lead. In meetings, Guttmann suggests focusing on the key points rather than trying to cover everything. If you've ever sat through a meeting where someone went on and on without ever getting to the point, you know how frustrating it can be. By keeping your meetings focused and direct, you'll be more productive, and your team will appreciate the clarity. Guttmann also recommends challenging unnecessary complexity when you see it. This doesn't mean being confrontational, but rather asking questions like, "Is there a simpler way we can do this?" Or, "Do we really need all this information to make a decision?" Often, people default to complexity because they think it makes them seem more thorough or knowledgeable. But as Guttmann explains, true expertise lies in the ability to simplify complex ideas. He provides some useful strategies for advocating for simplicity in a respectful and effective way. For example, when reviewing a report or presentation, you can ask, "What's the main takeaway here?" Or, "Is there a way we can make this clearer for the audience?" By framing your questions in a positive, solution-oriented way, you can encourage others to embrace simplicity without making them feel defensive. Chapter 7. Overcoming Barriers to Simplicity. Simplicity sounds great, but it's not always easy to achieve. In this chapter, Guttmann discusses some of the common barriers that prevent people from simplifying their communication and offers strategies for overcoming them. One of the biggest barriers is the fear of leaving something out. Many of us feel that if we don't include every piece of information, we're not giving a complete picture. But as Guttmann explains, less is often more. When you try to include too much, you overwhelm your audience and dilute your message. Instead, focus on the most important points and trust that your audience will ask questions if they need more information. Another common barrier is the belief that complexity makes you seem smarter or more authoritative. Guttmann challenges this idea by pointing out that the most effective communicators are those who can take complex ideas and explain them in simple, relatable terms. Think about the best teachers you've had. They weren't the ones who used the most jargon or complicated language. They were the ones who could break down difficult concepts and make them easy to understand. Guttmann also touches on the role of ego in preventing simplicity. Sometimes, people overcomplicate things because they want to show off their knowledge or expertise. But as Guttmann points out, true confidence comes from being able to simplify your message without feeling the need to prove how much you know. When you focus on clarity, you're prioritizing your audience's needs over your own ego. Finally, Guttmann acknowledges that there are times when simplifying your message can feel risky. You might worry that if you leave out certain details, your audience won't fully understand the message. But as he explains, clarity and simplicity often lead to better understanding, not less. When you focus on the most important information, your audience is more likely to engage with and remember your message. He closes the chapter by encouraging you to practice simplicity in all areas of your life, not just in communication. Whether it's simplifying your daily routine, decluttering your home, or focusing on fewer, more meaningful activities, embracing simplicity can help reduce stress and create more space for what truly matters. Chapter 8. The Benefits of Simplifying Your Life. In this chapter, Guttmann expands the concept of simplicity beyond communication and into everyday life. He argues that the same principles that make communication more effective can also help you create a more fulfilling and balanced life. Guttmann begins by discussing the idea of mental clutter. Just as a cluttered workspace can make it harder to focus, a cluttered mind can make it harder to think clearly and make decisions. By simplifying your environment and your daily routines, you can reduce mental clutter and create more space for creativity, focus, and relaxation. He shares some practical tips for simplifying your life, starting with your physical environment. Clutter in your home or workspace can create a sense of overwhelm and make it harder to concentrate. Guttmann suggests decluttering regularly and focusing on keeping only the items that serve a purpose or bring you joy. This doesn't mean you have to become a minimalist, but rather that you should be intentional about what you choose to keep in your space. The same principles apply to how you spend your time. Many of us are guilty of overcommitting, filling our schedules with activities and obligations that don't align with our true priorities. Guttmann encourages you to take a step back and evaluate how you're spending your time. Are there activities that you could eliminate to create more space for the things that truly matter? By simplifying your schedule, you can create more time for meaningful experiences and reduce the stress of constantly trying to do too much. He also touches on the importance of simplifying your digital life. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with notifications, emails, and social media updates, which can create a sense of overwhelm and distract us from what's important. Guttmann suggests setting boundaries around your digital consumption, whether that means turning off unnecessary notifications, decluttering your inbox, or setting aside specific times of day to check social media. Another area where simplicity can have a big impact is in your relationships. Guttmann argues that many of us overcomplicate our relationships by trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, he suggests focusing on the relationships that truly matter and being intentional about how you spend your time with those people. Simplifying your social life doesn't mean cutting people out. It means prioritizing the relationships that bring you the most joy and fulfillment. Guttmann closes the chapter by discussing the idea of intentional living. When you simplify your life, you create more space for the things that matter most, whether that's spending time with loved ones, pursuing a passion, or simply enjoying moments of peace and quiet. By embracing simplicity in all areas of your life, you can reduce stress, increase your sense of fulfillment, and create a more balanced and meaningful existence. Chapter 9. Embracing Simplicity in the Digital Age. In the digital age, the volume of information we encounter daily is staggering. From social media feeds to constant notifications on our phones, the barrage of data can make it challenging to stay focused and communicate effectively. Guttmann acknowledges this challenge and offers practical strategies for embracing simplicity in a world that often feels overwhelmingly complex. One of the most significant challenges of the digital age is the constant stream of distractions. Whether it's an email alert, a social media notification, or the latest breaking news, it's easy to get pulled in multiple directions at once. Guttmann suggests that one of the best ways to simplify your digital life is to limit distractions. This might mean turning off non-essential notifications, setting specific times to check email, or even taking regular breaks from social media. Another important strategy is to curate the information you consume. In the digital age, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of content available at our fingertips. Guttmann encourages you to be selective about what you choose to engage with. Instead of trying to keep up with every news story, blog post, or social media update, focus on the content that aligns with your interests and priorities. This can help reduce information overload and make it easier to stay focused on what truly matters. Guttmann also touches on the idea of digital minimalism, a concept that involves being intentional about how you use technology. Digital minimalism isn't about cutting out technology altogether. It's about using it in a way that enhances your life rather than detracts from it. For example, instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media, you might choose to use technology for specific purposes, like staying in touch with loved ones or learning something new. He also discusses the importance of simplifying your digital presence, especially if you're a business owner or have a personal brand. In a world where everyone is vying for attention online, it's tempting to try to be everywhere at once, on every platform, posting as much content as possible. But as Guttmann points out, this approach often leads to burnout and diminished impact. Instead, he suggests focusing on a few key platforms and delivering high-quality, simple content that resonates with your audience. The chapter also explores the idea of creating a digital detox routine. In a world where we are constantly connected, taking intentional breaks from technology can help restore balance and reduce stress. Guttmann encourages you to set aside specific times during the day when you disconnect from your devices and focus on activities that bring you joy and fulfillment. This might include spending time in nature, engaging in a creative hobby, or simply relaxing without the constant pull of notifications. Ultimately, Guttmann argues that while the digital age presents unique challenges, it also offers opportunities for greater simplicity. By being intentional about how you use technology and curating the information you consume, you can reduce overwhelm and create a more focused, fulfilling digital experience. Chapter 10. Bringing it all together. In this final chapter, Guttmann brings everything together, reminding you that simplicity is a powerful tool in every aspect of life. Whether you're communicating at work, navigating the digital world, or managing your personal life, simplicity will help you be more effective, reduce stress, and create stronger connections with others. He encourages you to make simplicity a habit. It takes practice to break the cycle of overcomplicating things, but the rewards are well worth it. When you embrace simplicity, you'll find that your messages are clearer, your work is more productive, and your life feels more balanced. To close the book, Guttmann emphasizes the idea that simplicity is a mindset, not just a set of strategies. By adopting a mindset of simplicity, you'll start to see opportunities for simplification everywhere, from the way you communicate with colleagues to the way you manage your time. And as you continue to practice simplicity, you'll likely find that it brings not only more clarity and focus, but also a greater sense of peace and fulfillment. Guttmann leaves you with a final call to action. Make simplicity a priority in your life. Whether you're decluttering your home, simplifying your communication, or reducing distractions in the digital world, the benefits of simplicity are far-reaching. By focusing on what truly matters and cutting out the unnecessary, you can create more space for creativity, connection, and joy in all areas of your life. This summary only scratches the surface of Guttmann's insights and practical advice. For a deeper dive into the power of simplicity and more detailed examples, I highly recommend picking up a copy of Simply Put. It's a book that will change the way you communicate and simplify your life in ways you might not have expected.